Don't board her tonight, sir. The voice was small and came from somewhere between the third and fourth pilings where the water lapped quietly against salt-bleached wood, and Carlton Reed heard it the way a man hears something that does not belong. Not with alarm, not at first, but with the particular stillness that settles over a person when the world has said something it shouldn't know how to say. He was already at the gangplank, one hand resting on the aluminum rail, the other holding the key fob for the running lights. The Miriam Grace sat in her slip looking as she always looked on an evening like this, calm and steady and faintly lit by the dying copper of a late summer sun, her white hull throwing long orange streaks across the still water of the private marina. She was a 42-foot sloop, built by a yard in Annapolis in 2011, and Carlton had purchased her the year before his wife died. Miriam had never sailed her. She had only seen the photographs, propped up on a pillow in the hospital room at the very end, asking careful questions about the rigging in the same voice she used for everything she loved. Carlton turned. The girl was crouched at the edge of the dock between two equipment lockers, her arms wrapped around her knees, her dark eyes wide and fixed on him with the kind of directness that children use when they have decided. This is the last chance. She looked to be about 10. Her hair was in two tight braids that had come loose on one side, so that the left one hung longer than the right. She wore a green raincoat that was too large for her, its sleeves pushed up to the elbows, and beneath it a gray t-shirt with a faded logo Carlton could not read. Her sneakers were dry on top and dark around the soles, the way sneakers get when a person has been walking wet ground for days and then walked back into dry again. She did not flinch when he looked at her. She did not look away. "You shouldn't be on this dock," Carlton said. His voice was careful. 64 years had taught him to be careful with voices. He had argued cases before federal judges that turned on the difference between a careful tone and an impatient one. "How did you get past the gate?" "The latch on the side gate sticks," the girl said. "It doesn't catch all the way when the wood swells. I've been using it since March." She said it with no particular guilt, as if it were simply a logistical observation. She had said since March, which meant she had been coming to this marina for the better part of 6 months. Carlton noted both facts. He noted that she was watching him with something more complicated than fear. "Don't board her tonight," she said again. "Please, something's wrong with the boat." Carlton did not move for a moment. He was a man who had built a shipping investment company worth $630 million over 38 years by learning to distinguish between the things people said and the things they meant. He had sat across tables from men who smiled while their lawyers slid fraudulent appraisals across the felt. He had read the pauses between sentences the way other men read earnings reports. The girl meant it. Whatever she meant it completely. He took his hand off the rail. "Tell me what you saw," he said. She unfolded herself from the crouch and stood up straight, which made her look both younger and older at the same time. Younger because she was slight and small, older because of the way her shoulders squared. She reached into the front pocket of the raincoat and produced a folded piece of paper, creased many times over, and held it out to him. "I wrote it down," she said, "in case I forgot." Carlton took the paper. He unfolded it. The writing was careful and even, the letters slightly too large, the kind of handwriting a child produces when she is working very hard to be legible. It said 2 men. One had tools, gray bag, came on a Wednesday night around 10, went under the back of the boat near the engine. Stayed for maybe 20 minutes. I heard them talking. He looked up. "I couldn't hear all of it," she said. "I was behind the locker on the end slip. But I heard the one with the tools say the fuel line was done. And then the other one said something about the bilge pump. And then the one with the tools said, he goes out of loan on Fridays. He won't come back from this one." Carlton felt the evening air very precisely against the back of his neck. "What did the other man say?" he asked. He said, "Make sure it looks like equipment failure. These old boats have accidents. That's why they keep insurance adjusters employed." And then he laughed. He had a laugh that was too big for the dock. I remember thinking it sounded wrong, like someone practicing a laugh. She paused. And then he said, "Mr. B sends his regards to the bottom of the Atlantic." He said it like a joke, and then they left. Carlton was quiet for a long time. A pelican settled on the dock post at the far end of the slip, regarded the water, and flew away again. Somewhere behind him at the marina office, a radio was playing something low and country. The ordinary sounds of an ordinary evening that had, in the space of 90 seconds, become something else entirely. "When was this?" he said. "Last Wednesday. I've been coming to the gate every day since. To catch you. You come on Fridays. I was scared you wouldn't come today. I was scared I'd miss you, and then on Monday I'd read something in the paper." Her chin lifted slightly. "I was once going to let that happen. He looked at her. She had been coming every day since Wednesday. She had written it down so she wouldn't forget a single detail. She had stood at a stuck side gate every morning for 6 days and waited because she was afraid she would miss him. "What's your name?" he asked. Naya Cross. "Naya, my name is Carlton. I'm going to make a phone call. I want you to stay right here while I do that. You're not in any trouble, and I am not going to call anyone about you specifically. I'm going to call the harbor master and then the police. After I make those calls, I want you to tell me everything again, exactly as you told me, from the beginning. Can you do that?" "Yes, sir. I practiced it." "I know you did." He looked at the folded paper in his hand. "I can see that." He called the harbor master first because the harbor master controlled access to the Miriam Grace before any law enforcement officer could, and because Carlton Reed had not survived 38 years in maritime investment by failing to establish chain of custody. Then he called the police, stated his name and address, stated that his vessel had potentially been tampered with, stated that he had a child witness who required careful handling. He did not call Alistair Bloom. Mr. B. He stood at the edge of the dock with his phone in his hand and let that land. He had known Alistair Bloom for 27 years. He had brought Alistair on as CFO when Reed Shipping Capital was still operating out of a single rented office in Baltimore, when Carlton had been working on 4 hours of sleep a night, when the company was a gamble and not yet a fact. He had been at Alistair's wedding. He had sat beside Alistair in the front row at his father's funeral. He had given Alistair the second key to his lake house in Vermont because he had said simply that he trusted him more than he trusted most members of his own family. He thought about a conversation 3 months ago. Alistair, sitting in the leather chair across from Carlton's desk, talking about the restructuring of the company's equity stakes. Talking about the provisions in the partnership agreement regarding acquisition of founder shares upon death or incapacitation. Talking about it in the careful way he always had, which Carlton had not thought strange at the time because Alistair always spoke carefully about financial structures. That was what CFOs did. Carlton closed his eyes. He opened them. Naya was watching him. "You look like you know who Mr. B is," she said. "I might," Carlton said. "I'm working very hard right now to be wrong." He was not wrong. Some part of him already understood that. The harbor master, a thick-shouldered man named Gable who had been running the marina for 18 years, arrived in 11 minutes with 2 dock staff and a flashlight. He listened to Carlton without interruption, which was one of the things Carlton had always valued about Gable. The man had no interest in performing skepticism. He ducked beneath the stern of the Miriam Grace, lay flat on the dock's edge, and was quiet for 45 seconds. When he came back up, his face was arranged the way faces arrange themselves when the information is worse than expected. "Your fuel line has a clean cut about 8 inches from the manifold," Gable said, voice level. "Wrapped back together with electrical tape and marine sealant. From above, it looks patched. On the water, at pressure, it would give way. I also need to show the police the bilge pump. The float switch has been adjusted. If water came in, the pump wouldn't trigger automatically." Carlton said nothing. "You would have motored out under normal fuel pressure," Gable said. "Probably made it a mile or 2 offshore before things started dropping. At that point, you'd have been working the sails, trying to figure out the engine. If water started coming in from wave action, you wouldn't have known the pump wasn't working until—" He stopped. "Until it was too late," Carlton said. "Yes, sir." Detective Anita Coyne arrived 20 minutes later in an unmarked silver sedan. She was in her late 40s with close-cropped brown hair going gray at the temples and the kind of unhurried efficiency that suggested she had learned long ago that urgency and calm were not opposites. She wore a navy blazer over a white shirt, carried a notebook and a phone, and shook Carlton's hand before she did anything else. She went to Naya second. She crouched. Not the performance crouch, not the I am trying to seem approachable crouch, but simply a lower angle so the girl didn't have to look up. And she said, "My name is Anita. I'm a detective, which means I find out what actually happened as opposed to what somebody wanted people to think happened. You've already done most of my job. I'd like to hear what you know when you're ready, and I want you to know that you can stop any time," Naya told her. She told it in the same measured way she had told Carlton, and she told it with the same careful precision, including the detail about the laugh that sounded like someone practicing. Detective Coyne wrote without interrupting once. When Naya finished, Coyne turned to Carlton. "Mr. Reed, I need to ask you about the name, Mr. B." Carlton told her about Alistair Bloom. He told her the way he told things in deposition, in sequence, with precision, without editorializing. He told her about the partnership structure, about the equity provisions in the founder agreement, about the conversation 3 months ago in his office, regarding what happened to founder shares upon death. He told her about a dinner 6 weeks ago, at which Alistair had suggested, almost in passing, that Carlton might want to update his personal directive regarding company authority. Just in case, he had said. Just to keep things clean and current. Carlton had said he'd look at it later. He had not yet looked at it. He told her about the Vermont Lake House key. He told her that Alistair knew he sailed alone on Fridays. He told her that Alistair had called on Tuesday, 3 days ago, to ask if Carlton was planning to take the boat out this weekend, because he was thinking of coming up to the marina with his family for the holiday and wanted to make sure the slip was available. Alistair had wanted to confirm Carlton would be on the water. Detective Coyne underlined something twice. "Mr. Reed, I'm going to ask you to do something difficult. I need you not to contact Alistair Bloom tonight in any form. No call, no text, no email. If he reaches out to you, respond normally. We are going to need time to build this properly, because a man with his resources and his knowledge of your company's legal structures will be very difficult to prosecute unless we have clean evidence." She paused. "What I will tell you is that we have been watching a connected investigation for 4 months involving what we believe to be a coordinated pattern of maritime accidents targeting high-net-worth individuals. You are not the first case with this signature. You are, as of tonight, the first one who was warned in time." Carlton absorbed that. He thought about the Miriam Grace sitting in her slip, looking quiet and white and ordinary. He thought about how it would have looked from the cockpit. On a Friday evening, the sails up, the harbor opening to open water, the particular piece of an hour offshore when you could no longer see the city. He thought about Miriam's photographs propped on the hospital pillow. He thought about how much he had wanted, in the years since she died, to take the boat somewhere she had never been and leave something of her there. A phrase, a habit, a specific quality of silence, and how he had not yet done it. There was always a next quarter, always a reason to wait one more Friday. He had almost run out of Fridays. "Detective," he said quietly, "the girl." Coyne looked at Naya, who had settled herself on an equipment locker and was watching the water with the expression of a child who has been told to stay put and has decided, for once, to do exactly that. "Tell me about her situation," Coyne said. Carlton told her what he knew. She had been using the stuck side gate since March. She had been coming to this marina for 6 months. She had written it down and come back every day for 6 days straight. "Naya," Carlton said, and the girl looked over. "Can you tell Detective Coyne a little about where you've been staying?" Naya crossed the dock to them without hurrying and without shrinking. She stood in front of Coyne and said, in the same steady register she used for everything, "I've been sleeping in the storage shed on the east side of the property. The one that's not locked properly. I know I'm not supposed to. I didn't break anything. I have a sleeping bag I keep rolled behind the life jacket rack. Mr. Ferris knows I'm there. He hasn't called anyone because he said he didn't want me to end up somewhere worse." "Who is Mr. Ferris?" Coyne asked. "He works maintenance here. He gives me food sometimes when there's extra from the staff break room. Yesterday he gave me a sandwich and a juice box because he could tell I hadn't eaten much." She paused. "He's the one who showed me the gate sticks. He showed me so I'd have a way out if I ever needed to leave fast." Coyne wrote down the name. She wrote down Storage Shed East Property, staff member Ferris. "Where are your parents?" Coyne asked. Naya's expression did not change, except in some way Carlton could not exactly name, the way a flame adjusts to wind without going out. "My dad left when I was 3. My mom got sick when I was 8. She died last spring. I was staying with my uncle in Trenton, but I could tell I was making things worse. So I left." She said it plainly, as if she had decided some time ago that facts were facts and pity was a different thing and the two were best kept separate. "He signed something at the hospital, a social services paper." He cried when he signed it, a pause. "He's not a bad person. He just doesn't have room." Carlton was quiet for a moment. The evening had gone full dark while they'd been talking. The dock lights were on now, casting flat pale circles on the water, and the Miriam Grace sat in her slip looking exactly as she always had. He thought about how many ordinary-looking things had not been ordinary at all tonight. He thought about how many ordinary-looking things he had walked past in his life without stopping. "Detective Coyne," he said. "She has been coming to this gate every morning for 6 days. She wrote it down so she wouldn't forget a single detail. She is 10 years old, and she has been carrying this alone because she didn't know who else to give it to." He paused. "I am not sending her back to a storage shed tonight." Coyne looked at him with the expression of someone who has learned to verify intentions before filing paperwork, but knows the real kind when she hears it. I know a caseworker I trust, someone who does emergency placements correctly and quickly. She can be here within the hour. I'm willing, Carlton said. Before anything else was arranged, Carlton asked Naya if there was anyone who needed to know she was safe tonight. Naya thought about it, sitting very still on the equipment locker. Mr. Ferris, she said. He checks the shed at the end of his shift. If I'm not there, he'll look for me. He did that once in July when I was sick. She picked at the cuff of her raincoat. He's been the most stable thing I've had since June. They found Ted Ferris in the maintenance bay at the north end of the property. A compact, quiet-spoken man in his mid-50s with oil-stained hands and the kind of face that does not offer much until it has decided you're worth it. When he saw Naya walk in with Carlton and Detective Coyne, he set down his wrench very carefully, the way people set things down when they are preparing for bad news. She's not in trouble, Carlton said. Ferris exhaled once. Then he looked at Naya. You talked to someone. I talked to him, she said, with a small nod toward Carlton. He listened. Ferris looked at Carlton then. His assessment took perhaps 5 seconds. The jacket, the silver hair, the way Carlton stood at the threshold without filling it. She's been here 6 months, Ferris said. I know. I should have called someone. I've picked up the phone twice. But I looked at the shelters on the list, and I looked at her, and I couldn't do it. She's the most self-contained kid I've ever met. She never asked me for a single thing she didn't need. He paused. Whatever she told you, it's true. She doesn't say things that aren't. She saved my life tonight, Carlton said. Something moved in Ferris's face that he clearly did not expect. Figured, he said quietly. She's been watching that gate like her shift depended on it all week. He went to his locker and took out a folded piece of paper, a phone number written in permanent marker on a square of cardboard, the kind a person writes down when they expect to need it fast. He handed it to Carlton without ceremony. Day or night? I mean it. Just don't let her disappear into the system and come out somewhere she doesn't belong. I won't, Carlton said. Ferris crouched in front of Naya. He put one large, calloused hand briefly on her shoulder, not holding her in place but grounding her, the way you touch someone before a long journey. You did a brave thing, he said. Your mother would have been proud of you. Naya's eyes filled. She did not cry. She nodded. Once, quickly, the way she nodded at everything that mattered, and then she put her arms around his neck and he held her with the careful, formal tenderness of a man who had not planned to become someone's person but had become one anyway, and had done his honest best with it. The caseworker arrived at 9:15. Her name was Beverly Odom, and she drove a burgundy compact with a car freshener shaped like a pine tree and a back seat that contained, Carlton later learned, a stuffed rabbit, a new toothbrush, a pair of socks, a granola bar, and a change of clothes in roughly Naya's, because Beverly Odom had been doing emergency placements for 19 years, and she had learned that the first night was about the body before it was about anything else. She sat with Naya for 20 minutes alone in the marina office. When she came out, she spoke to Carlton on the dock where the water was still and black and full of reflected light. She's in good shape, considering. Clear-headed. Doesn't show signs of acute trauma, just the accumulated kind that doesn't make noise but costs everything. She looked at the Miriam Grace in her slip. Mr. Reed, I need to ask you something directly, because I've learned that direct is kinder than polite at this stage. What is your intention with this child? Tonight is one thing. Next month is another. Next year is something else entirely. Carlton considered the question the way it deserved to be considered. My wife and I talked about adoption twice, he said. We were always going to do it next year. After the next project, after the next quarter, after things settled down. Things didn't settle down. She got sick. Then she was gone. And I have spent 3 years taking that boat out alone on Fridays and telling myself I still had time for the things I kept postponing. He looked at the Miriam Grace. I almost ran out of time tonight. That girl stood at a broken gate every morning for 6 days to make sure I didn't. I am 64 years old and I have more money than I will spend and more empty rooms than I ever intended to have. I am not letting her go back to a storage shed. I want to do this properly and I want to do it completely, and I understand that properly and completely means years, not weeks. He paused. I won't drift. If I'm wrong about myself, you'll hear it from me before she does. Beverly Odom looked at him for a long moment. That, she said, is exactly the right answer. I'll file the emergency placement paperwork tonight. By midnight, she's legally in your temporary care under agency supervision. The rest will take time. The rest is the real work. She tilted her head. Do you have somewhere to take her tonight? Somewhere your business partner doesn't know? Carlton thought of the lake house in Vermont, which Alistair had the key to. He thought of his apartment in the city, which Alistair had visited many times. He thought of every space in his life, that Alistair Bloom had stood in for 27 years, had memorized without being asked, had filed away with the quiet patience of someone who expected to need it. "I have a farmhouse in western Maryland," he said. "It was my wife's family's before we married. It's in her maiden name. Alistair doesn't know it exists." "Good," Beverly said. "We'll arrange transportation." Detective Coyne called at 6:48 the next morning. Carlton was sitting on the farmhouse porch with a cup of coffee, watching the mist pull itself off the fields the way mist does in the hour after dawn, reluctantly and in pieces. The farmhouse smelled of old wood and the lavender Miriam had planted along the fence line, which had spread since her death into something larger than she'd planted, something she would have loved, and he had not had the heart to trim back. "Alistair Bloom was arrested at his home at 6:10 this morning," Coyne said. "He was coming out his front door with a briefcase. He asked for his attorney before we finished reading him his rights." A pause. "The two men he hired are also in custody. One of them has been cooperating since 4 in the morning. He has named 4 other individuals in what appears to be a coordinated insurance and estate fraud operation, targeting wealthy men who lived alone, widowers, men who sailed alone, men who had nobody scheduled to ask the right questions afterward." Carlton held the phone against his ear and watched the mist lift from the fields. He thought about Alistair at Miriam's funeral, standing close, saying nothing, which Carlton had interpreted at the time as the particular comfort of a man who understood that silence was sometimes the only honest language. He thought about all the things you believe about a person when you have decided to trust them. He thought about how expensive that kind of believing can become. "Thank you, Detective," he said. "Thank the girl," she said. "She's the reason we have a live witness and a clean crime scene." He went inside. Naya was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table in the clothes Beverly had packed, a yellow sweater slightly too large, jeans that fit. Her braids redone neatly, both sides even now. An empty cereal bowl sat in front of her, and Carlton's dog-eared atlas of the Chesapeake Bay lay open on the table, which she appeared to have found on the bookshelf and open to the section on inlet passages. "He's arrested," Carlton said. Naya nodded. The same single serious nod she gave to every important thing. "Good." Then she looked back at the atlas. Is this where you sail?" "Some of it. The northern sections, mostly." He sat down across from her. "Do you know anything about sailing?" "Nothing." She looked up at him. "My mom used to say that everything worth knowing you learn late. She said she didn't learn the most important things until she was 30, and she was sorry it took that long." A pause. "I told her I'd start earlier. She said that was a good plan." Carlton was quiet for a moment. "She sounds like she was a wise person." "She was the wisest person I ever knew." Naya ran her finger along a contour line on the atlas page. "She told me to keep paying attention to the world, even when I was tired, even when nobody was watching me do it. She said most people stop paying attention, and that's when things go wrong." She looked up again, and her eyes were steady and dark and full of something that had no easy name. Not grief exactly, not acceptance exactly, but the particular quality of a child who has been asked to carry something enormous and has figured out how to carry it without letting it break her. "I kept my promise to her." "I know you did," Carlton said. Outside through the farmhouse window, the lavender along the fence line was moving in a small morning wind, silver green and full, the way Miriam had always said it looked best, not in full sun, but in the hour after, when everything was still deciding what kind of day it would become. Naya looked at him across the atlas. "Carlton," she said, and said it carefully, like a new word in a language she intended to speak for a long time. "The boat. I want to know how you fix a fuel line." Something shifted in Carlton Reed's chest. Something that had been fixed in the same position for 3 years, tight and unmoving, and shifted just slightly, the way a door shifts when someone puts a hand flat against it from the other side, not yet pushing, only resting there, letting you know they are present, letting you know they plan to stay. "We'll start with that," he said, "and then we'll go from there."